Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar hosted by Better Business Bureau. I am Allie Schmidt, Marketplace Manager at your local Better Business Bureau. Today, we have the opportunity to hear from Roseann Collins from Employer Services Outreach, Joyce Allen, a Return to Work Outreach Specialist, and Brent DeBeaumont, a Wage Payment and Hour Technical Specialist, all of which who are with the Washington State Department of Labor and Industries. If you have any questions at any time throughout the presentation, please type them in the question section of your webinar panel, and the panelists will address them during the webinar. Now that all of that is out of the way, thank you all for joining us, and the presentation is now yours, Roseann.
Well, thank you so much, Allie, for hosting us. We're really grateful for this opportunity to talk to your members about some things they need to know for retail and L&I basics. Today we're going to talk about quite a few things. We actually have quite a long list of topics we're going to cover. I always like to start with a little bit about labor and industry. Joyce is going to talk about stay at work and preferred worker. Brent is going to talk about the Wage Payment Act, basic age and hour laws, exemptions from minimum wage, deductions from ongoing and final paychecks, service charges, tips, meals and rest breaks, minor workers, and I'm going to come back and talk a little bit about workers' compensation reporting for retail firms, splitting hours and risk classifications, and some common questions we get. We're also going to talk about experience rating and do a cost comparison about if you have a good experience rating and you're doing everything you can to have a safe workplace versus if you don't. We're going to talk about rates management, and free L&I resources. I always like to start with a little bit about Washington, labor and industry. Our motto is keeping Washington safe and working, and we really do believe that. We're very passionate about keeping Washington safe and working here at Labor and Industry, and we support that with 5 goals. The first goal is make workplaces safe. And we are in charge of all the workplace safety in Washington State. We're the OSHA of Washington State. We also Goal number 2 is help injured workers heal and return to work. And this is something Joyce is going to talk about because we actually have incentives to help employers do that. Goal number 3 is make it easy to do business with L&I. And I know sometimes employers don't believe that, but it really is true. We do want to make it easy to do business with us, and we're always looking ways to improve our processes to make it easier to do business with us. Goal number 4 is help honest workers, businesses, and providers by cracking down on the dishonest one. We have a team of audit investigators, fraud investigators that go out and help with that, and they're very passionate because we really do want to make doing the right thing better and easier and more profitable for businesses. So if someone is purposely frauding us, we're going to go after them. And but if it's an honest worker, honest employer, honest provider that's just making a mistake, we want to do things like this where we can help inform them and educate them of how to do it right. Goal number 5 is ensure L&I is an employer of choice. We have thousands of workers, and we all really believe in the mission of keeping Washington safe and working, and L&I really is an employer of choice for us. We're going to turn it over right now to Joyce Allen. Hopefully this will be smooth. And here is Joyce Allen with the Stay at Work, Early Return to Work Department.
Hello, and thank you all for joining us. I'm very excited to talk to all of you. I definitely support or work for a program that supports goal number 2. I'm going to talk to you about the Stay at Work Reimbursement Program, a legislatively created program that can give back up to $10,000 to an employer if they offer an approved light-duty job to an employee after they're injured on the job. I'm also going to talk to you about the Preferred Worker Program, which has been around for a long time, but I'm going to talk to you about what it is and what the enhancements are of this program that, again, came out of the legislature January 1st of this year. Very excited to talk to you about that. I want to also let you know that I do have my contact there. In the corner, you'll always have it. It'll be with the Better Business Bureau if you have any need for outreach to talk to you about how you can get monies back through these programs. You may not have an injury in a couple of weeks, maybe it's a couple of years, maybe never, that would be ideal. But you have a contact, you have someone that you can call and say, hey, what was it that I needed to do to get this incentive going? Before I talk about the Stay at Work Reimbursement or the Preferred Worker Program, I really want to talk to you about creating a return to work culture. Now, for years, we've had a very old culture. It's, I would think, more labeled as a reactive culture, where the employer, the injured worker, didn't really know what the next step was, and the injury occurred, and it was more of a reactive process. We're trying to create a more proactive culture in the state of Washington. These incentive programs are really helping, really changing the mindset of employers, offering light duty where before maybe they didn't. But that return to work culture is forming in our community, and it's really helped us give back $50 million back to Washington state employers. And the success of that is through shared programs and policies that employers have created in their work environments to enhance and support that proactive return to work culture. A lot of employers are creating policies and programs and starting at the interview stage and saying, hey, Joe, we like you, we want you to work for this company, but we have expectations. If you get injured, we're going to take care of you. But we have expectations of you to return back to work and to take this form over to the doctor. It's just like a safety program policy or a security program. We're saying, hey, have something set up in place that will create a proactive environment so that you can better take advantage of the reimbursements. So, sliding forward, this legislatively created program is for state fund employers only. And it's 50% of the base wage. There are monies excluded, but we do include shift differential and overtime. A lot of employers were saying, hey, I don't have anything on day shift. We're too busy, but on night shift, I have night guardsmen, I have inventory. We also include overtime. If an employee is not limited to hours and they can work 12 hours a day, then it's a larger reimbursement for the employer. Now, the reimbursement is up to 66 days actually worked or $10,000, whichever comes first. And the reason that the department's using 66 days is because we use 22 working days in a month, and that's 3 months. 3 months of light duty. And statistically, it's proven that medical conditions, soft tissue, sprains, back injuries, knee sprains, resolve within the first 90 days. And so that's why the 66 days has been chosen. The 66 days can be used within a 24-month period. And the beauty of that is if you use 20 days of light duty and the claim closes but then successfully reopens, if it reopens within that 24-month period, you can use the rest of those remaining days. Now, an employer has a year to apply for this reimbursement, and it's per claim. It's not per Joe. So if Joe's shoulder injury heals, you took advantage of the whole program and all of its incentives, and a finger laceration, another light duty position, another possibility of another $10,000. I want to tell you that it's not just wage reimbursement. We also have training reimbursement. It's $1,000. I've walked into some businesses and they've shown me libraries of safety videos, which are really expensive, that they purchase through the program. It's training materials that's needed to create the light duty position. So if you have someone, let's say a construction worker, or let's just use retail. If you have someone that's doing something in stocking in a warehouse, but now you want to bring them in to maybe do more customer service or a little bit of office work, you could have them take an Excel online training course, maybe even get a certification for customer service or learn some new customer service skills at an online community college or even at a community college. But it's $1,000 that can aid the employer to successfully bring someone back to light duty. So we have another category for tools and equipment, and all this becomes the property of the employer. So never before have we had the opportunity to get in the door and offer sit-stand stations, ergo chairs, hydraulic systems. Hospitals and are using lifting equipment. Hotels are getting bed makers. Auto malls are getting golf carts. It's computers, laptops. It's thinking outside the box. What do we need to make this light duty job happen? We also have a clothing reimbursement, which does become the property of the worker. So if you have someone who's more in the warehouse and now they're going to be coming up front, the same example, customer service, maybe some khaki pants and a button-up shirt. Or if you're going to have someone work outside, or we had one employer that had a freezer inventory light duty job, and there's jackets out there that they could purchase that warm up. You plug them in to heat them up. So in creating that proactive return to work culture and letting everybody know, hey, this is the plan if you get injured, it's the job description form that goes over to the doctor. And I want to tell you that reimbursement for our program doesn't start until this form is sent over to the provider, communicated in writing. So if Joe knows to walk over to whoever is the return to work coordinator or the point of contact and take this form over to the doctor, wave it in the air, walking in the doctor and saying, hey, I'm returning back to work light duty. Here's the light duty job. This is the first and most important step because it is what's required for the reimbursement. And with your program or policy, it's educating everybody on where's the form. This is all you need to remember. You're injured, you come over, you take this form to the physician. Now, I see that as a one-way street from the business to the provider. Coming back from the provider, we have activity prescription forms. And they're not prescription forms for drugs, they're for activity. If a claim is filed, because we have a provider network, the physicians will complete the activity prescription form in detail and send it to the department. There's even a box under the provider signature that says copy given to worker. So if you have a program or a policy and they know, hey, one-way street, take this form over to the doctor's going to give you this activity prescription form, bring that back to us, or call us and say you couldn't bring it back, you're too injured. We'll call the physician and ask for it to get faxed back, because that's what you're going to base the light duty job on. Now, being proactive, you've sent over the lightest light duty job description that you could come up with. But when this form comes back to you, you can say, well, you know, Joe, I can see you can really do your job, just maybe you need to stand every 20 minutes. So you can modify the light duty again once you receive this activity prescription form. So I talked to you about stay at work reimbursement, and that's for temporary position because the restrictions are light duty. Excuse me, the restrictions are temporary. So now I'm going to talk to you about a preferred worker program that comes into effect if your employee gets permanent restrictions. The preferred worker program has been around for a very long time, and what it is you have an employee named Joe. Joe gets permanent restrictions, can never work in the industry he was injured in. There's a break in relationship. Joe then has to go out and seek a job, maybe based on something his resume had, or qualify for a full vocational retraining. And there's only, I'd say, 4 or 5% of claims that actually qualify for a full vocational retraining. And that could be very expensive to the employer, to that claim, and to their rates. But with this new enhanced preferred worker program, after January 1st of 2016, if any of your employees get permanent restrictions, you can keep that employee on, offer them a new permanent position. Hey, Joe, you worked over here. I'm just going to think outside your industry. To give an easy example, you were a crane operator, but now we're going to have you come in and work customer service. I'm going to offer you $15 an hour, and these are the requirements. Now, Joe doesn't have to accept that job. He can move on and find his own job. But if he accepts that job, we are going to offer another $10,000 to the employer, state fund or self-insured, for 66 days. We're also going to offer another $400 for clothing, tools, and equipment of $2,500. And there is no additional $1,000 for training. It's just like offering any other person a job that walks in off the street. You'll have to train them themselves. But to enforce continuous employment, if you keep Joe on that permanent position for 12 months without a reduction in pay, there's another up to $10,000 bonus at the end of the 12 months. And again, it's another year from another year for you to file. There is a time limit. So I want to tell you that there are some requirements for the preferred worker program, but the most important thing for you to remember is to contact the claims manager. Hey, I've got an employee and I was just notified that he has permanent restrictions. They will let you know what is all required. Again, there's my contact information, the Stay at Work website, the email that you can contact us, and the toll-free number. I'm going to pass the microphone over to the next speaker, and I appreciate that you've spent this time with us.
Well, a little bit of technical difficulties. Wouldn't mind holding for a few seconds.
That's okay, Brent. I am just going to touch on a point really quick while you guys are transitioning the slides.
Okay.
And that is just to talk about, the correlation between L&I and Better Business Bureau and why we do these presentations and these webinars. And I think it really hones in on goal number 4 for you guys that you have at Washington State Department of Labor and Industries, and that was to help the honest workers by cracking down on the dishonest ones. And I think just like L&I, there is this ongoing perception that you guys are the bad guys when really you have a lot of resources for workers and employers to help themselves and grow and learn and become better, and all of your advising services that you also have. And I just want to point out that, BBB kind of has that same rap, and we're both in this together. And that's why we do this for all the participants listening. BBB, yes, we like to crack down on the scammers, and we have our scam tracker, and we have all these different resources to, stop the bad people, but we're not always the bad guy. We like to be the good guy too. And I think this presentation is one of the examples on how we like to give as much information as we can to employers and employees. So
Absolutely, well said. And I can speak from experience. We have a dedicated staff at L&I that is here to answer any and all questions that the public may have.
That's awesome.
All right, it looks like we are ready to go on our end.
Take it away, Brent.
Perfect, thank you. All right, so my name is Brent DeBeaumont, and I'm the Wage Payment and Hour Technical Specialist with the Employment Standards Program. And the Employment Standards Program at L&I enforces the Wage Payment Act, which allows employees to file complaints if they believe they've been improperly paid minimum wages, overtime, haven't received a final paycheck, have received unlawful deductions, and have not been paid their agreed to wage. And I'll explain a little bit more about that a little bit later, but that's primary purpose for the Employment Standards Program here at L&I. We also enforce some agricultural employment standards laws, and also protected leave laws and child labor laws. So my goal for my part of the presentation is to present a general summary of state laws and regulations that are relevant to employers in the retail industry, while clarifying several key differences between state and federal laws in this area, and also to provide my contact information as well as contact information for several of my colleagues should you have questions that touch on their area of expertise. Again, like I said, the Employment Standards Program here, we primarily investigate allegations of noncompliance with the Wage Payment Act. We have over 16 agents around the state that are dedicated to adjudicating and figuring out whether wage payment violations have occurred. Up on your screen right now is an overview of the wage payment requirements that my department has jurisdiction to initiate an investigation. And how this works is aggrieved employees must file a complaint with our department and sign their name. Such complaints can't be anonymous. If they allege a wage payment requirement violation of the 5 wage payment requirements you see above, we are required by law to investigate. And if we determine that a wage payment violation has occurred, we issue a citation and notice of assessment, which orders the employer to pay the wages owed. If we can't find that a violation occurred, or if we don't find that a violation occurred at all, we will issue a determination of compliance. Either party can appeal a determination of compliance or notice of assessment, and that will take that into the Office of Administrative Hearings, and then there's a robust appeal process afterwards. So I'm going to start with a brief overview of minimum wage and overtime laws in the nation. As I'm sure most people are aware, the state of Washington has a higher minimum wage than the federal minimum wage. The federal minimum wage has been $7.25 an hour, and that has remained unchanged since July of 2009. And the map on your screen, which was effective January 1st, 2016, so as of November, it is still current, but it will change quite a bit this coming January. 29 states in the United States have higher minimum wage than the federal minimum wage, and 5 states have no minimum wage laws whatsoever, and where that happens, the default would be the federal minimum wage. So for Washington State, the current Washington State minimum wage is $9.47 an hour, and that is good until December 31st of this year. And this applies to all Washington-based employees unless they are specifically exempt from the minimum wage. There are currently 16 categories of exempt employees. And if you want to check out some of those, it is RCW 4946-0103A to P. A lot of obscure ones, but there will be several that could be directly relevant for the retail industry. Also important to note, bona fide independent contractors are not considered employees under the Minimum Wage Act, so they are not entitled to its protections. Every September, the Department of Labor and Industries publishes the next year's minimum wage. We did this this prior September for the calendar year 2017. The minimum wage is slated to be $9.53 an hour. However, as I discussed towards the end of my part of the presentation, last week, Initiative 1433 was voted on by the residents of Washington. The election results haven't been certified yet, but it appears the initiative will pass, and that will make the minimum wage in the year 2017 $11 an hour. I will discuss more about that initiative towards the end of my presentation. Also, in the state of Washington, we have 3 cities that have higher minimum wages than the state. And qualified employers and employees that qualify under those laws have to be paid that higher rate. And those cities currently are Tacoma, which is $10.35 in 2016. Seattle has a 4-tiered minimum wage system to figure out what minimum wage you should be paying if you're located in the city of Seattle. The Seattle Office of Labor Standards advises and enforces that regulation, and their phone number's on the screen there and also at the end of this presentation. And also the city of SeaTac, they have the minimum wage of $15.24 in 2016, and that applies to hospitality and transportation employers located within the city of SeaTac. And my department can also enforce these ordinances if we get a wage complaint filed alleging a violation of one of them. Overtime in the state of Washington, fairly straightforward, 1.5 times the regular rate of pay for each hour worked beyond 40 in the 7-day work week is due to employees that are not exempted from the Minimum Wage Act or aren't subject to a specific overtime exemption. To calculate the regular rate of pay, that is generally determined by dividing the total weekly compensation received by the employee by the total numbers of hours worked during the work week, including the hours over 40, and then paying the half-time rate for each hour worked over 40. If that calculation, the total compensation divided by total hours worked, dips below minimum wage, that would be a violation of payment of minimum wage, and you would need to raise the compensation up to sort of meet that gap. We have administrative policies on my department's website that explain these requirements in great detail. So some of the exemptions from minimum wage and overtime that may be specific to the retail industry. The first one are the bona fide salaried exempt positions. And under the Minimum Wage Act at 4946-0103C, any individual employed in a bona fide executive, administrative, or professional capacity, or in the capacity of an outside salesperson, is exempt from minimum wage and overtime. There are federal standards that are very similar, and some of them are more favorable to the employee. And where differences exist between federal or state law in this area, the standard more favorable or more protective to the employee must be followed. And the executive, administrative, and professional exemptions at the federal level will be changing effective December 1st of this year. And I will go into a little bit more detail about what that entails in just a second. So the first exemption that could be met in the retail industry is the executive exemption. And if you look at the left-hand side of the slide, in order for an employee to meet this exemption, they must be paid on a salary level of at least $250 a week. Their primary duty must be managing the enterprise or a customarily recognized department or subdivision, and they must also regularly direct the work of 2 or more other employees. And as you can see in the middle, there's a dash through 455 a week, and I inserted 913 a week, effective December 1st at the federal level. To qualify as exempt from overtime, an employee will need to be paid at least $913 a week, so that is greatly more favorable than Washington state law. If an employee is, between that $250 and $913 a week, so they otherwise meet the state exemption, and also the duties tests, my department wouldn't have authority to investigate a wage payment violation since they met the state requirements, but we would refer to the United States Department of Labor to see if they can collect overtime for an employee that hasn't met the federal regulation, but is nevertheless above the state requirements. And in the retail environment, this exemption is primarily met by store managers and certain department managers. And there's one of its counterparts, the administrative exemption, a little bit less frequent in the retail industry. And this is primarily people that are at computers, HR managers, payroll managers, others whose primary duty consists of the performance of office or non-manual work directly related to management policies could perhaps meet this exemption. Again, if they are paid at least $250 a week on a salary basis, and then at the state level, their work must require the exercise of discretion and independent judgment. Again, similar federal counterparts, and in order to qualify, you will need to pay such employees on a salary basis of at least $913 a week and meet the other duties requirements to properly exempt them from minimum wage and overtime payments. And to sort of just reiterate how this works, the differences between state and federal law and enforcement. If an employee is paid on a salary basis of at least $250 a week, but less than $913 a week, my department would refer those individuals to the U.S. Department of Labor to possibly initiate an investigation. And such employees could have a valid claim to the back payment of minimum wage and overtime wages if they are improperly exempted. Another exemption to keep in mind is the outside sales exemption. Under state law, to meet this, an employee has to meet 4 aspects of the duties requirement, and they are the employee is engaged in outside sales away from the employer's place of business. They are paid a guaranteed salary, commission, or fee payment. There isn't a specific amount of money that has to be paid. They just have to be guaranteed some sort of payment during the course of their employment. The outside salesperson must also control his or her total hours worked and no more than 20% inside office work not related to outside sales duties may be performed per work week. If those 4 requirements are met, that individual will be considered exempt from minimum wage and overtime as well. Finally, this one is directly specific to the retail industry, and this is an exemption from overtime only. So minimum wage is still required for such employees that meet this exemption. And this is if the worker is an employee of a retail or service establishment. Again, my department has an administrative policy that defines what we consider retail or service establishment, and it's a list of about 200 or 300 types of employment environments. And I believe the citation for that will be on the next slide or at the end of this presentation. The employee's regular rate of pay must also be in excess of 1.5 times the minimum hourly rate required by RCW 4946.020, which is essentially the state minimum wage, which is currently $9.47 and most likely $11 in 2017. For every hour worked in a work week, that overtime hours are worked. And also more than half of the employee's compensation for a representative period, which cannot be less than a month, must be commissions on goods or services. If all 3 of those are met, overtime pay is not due to those employees. Changing gears a little bit, this applies to all individuals regardless, excuse me, this applies to individuals that receive payments that from their employer, and specifically deductions, and what is allowed and what is disallowed. The allowable deductions in our state, they're in the screen in front of you, are those required by state or federal law, which include taxes and workers' compensation payments for medical, surgical, or hospital care, to satisfy a court order, judgment, wage attachment, or payroll deduction for child support payments. And this is a major one that our department receives a lot of complaints on. When an employee expressly authorizes the deduction in writing and in advance for a lawful purpose for the benefit of the employee. Pretty hard to meet this. There's 4 or 5 stipulations that have to be met, but this can include employee benefits, payment to a creditor or third party, employee loans, an employee purchase of employer goods or services. Important to note that the employer may derive absolutely no financial benefit from those deductions. These deductions must be recorded openly and clearly in payroll records. And employers may never make deductions from ongoing wages for customer theft, cash shortages in a till, and breakage of equipment. Under the Wage Payment Act, improper deductions are probably some of the most common complaints that my department receives. There's also another rule for deductions from the final paycheck, and it sort of reiterates a lot of the requirements under the ongoing pay rules. Such deductions that are allowed are required by state or federal law, medical, surgical care, court orders, and then also the stipulation that deductions can be specifically agreed upon between the employer and employee. The final payroll allows those agreements to be made orally. Obviously, my department recommends getting those agreements in writing. Written agreements are much easier to prove. But there's another category of deductions that are allowed during final pay that are not to the benefit of the employee. And several examples are given in the administrative code. Excuse me. And just for a brief overview, one of them is for acceptance of a bad check or credit card if the employer can show that the employee accepted the check or credit card in violations of procedures made known to the employee. And another one that is also important and very hard to meet as well, deductions taken due to alleged employee theft are allowed only if it can be shown that the employee's intent was to deprive and that the employer filed a police report. And again, that must take place in the final pay period in order for it to be a proper deduction. Important to note again, the employer has a responsibility to prove the existence of any agreement made for agreements to the benefit of the employee, and such deductions must be made clearly in the employee's payroll records. A little less common in the retail industry, but more common in the restaurant industry. Service charges. If an employer has a service charge, they must denote it in an itemized receipt and any menu provided to the customer, which states the percentage of the automatic service charge that is paid or payable directly to the employee or employees servicing the customer. For more information, check out RCW 49-46-160. Very important, these service charges cannot offset an employer's obligation to pay the state minimum wage. And the same is true with tips. Washington Administrative Code 296-126-022 states that gratuities received by employees shall not be considered part of the minimum wage. Federal law is a little bit different. And if you have questions about how federal law operates, I would contact the United States Department of Labor Wage and Hour Division. The City of Seattle also has a special rule for one of their tiers of minimum wages regarding tip credits. Again, contact the Seattle Office of Labor Standards with specific questions about that requirement. The general meal and rest period rule in the state for retail employers and essentially most employers that do not meet the definition of an agricultural employer. An employee shall be allowed a meal period of at least 30 minutes that begins no less than 2 hours nor more than 5 hours from the beginning of their shift. And no employee is allowed to work more than 5 hours without a meal period. Rest periods, paid rest periods specifically, must be given at least 10 minutes of rest time for each 4 hours of working time. and no employee shall be required to work more than 3 hours without a rest period. And this will apply to almost every retail employee in a retail environment. If you have questions about minor workers, I'm not the technical specialist in that area. Josie Bryan, one of my colleagues, is. Her information is at the bottom of the slide. Real fast though, if an employer wants to employ an employee under the age of 18, the employer must have a valid minor work permit and keep information on file for each minor worker. There is a special minimum wage for minors under age of 16, and they can be paid at least 85% of the state minimum wage. For those 16 and 17 years of age, they must be paid the same minimum wage as adults, which is currently $9.47 an hour. And as I mentioned at the beginning of my presentation, Initiative 1433, which was voted on last week by the state of Washington, is projected to pass, and that will likely be certified November 29th, so about a week and a half away. And if certification does occur, the minimum wage will be graduated up to $13.50 by the year 2020. And importantly, the minimum wage will rise to $11 an hour in 2017 for the entire state of Washington. Effective January 1st of 2018, so a year from this upcoming January 1st, paid sick leave will be a requirement for employees in the state, and they must accrue at least 1 hour of paid sick leave for every 40 hours worked. My department under the initiative, should the initiative be certified, is tasked with implementing rules to carry out the paid sick leave provision. If you have questions about how that will look going forward, feel free to give me a call or shoot me an email. My contact information is right up there on the screen. And now I'll turn it back over to Roseann. Unless there's any questions for me.
Yeah, I was just gonna jump in and say, please, we haven't seen any questions yet, but now that Brent has kind of given all of that in-depth information, please submit through the Q&A portion of our webinar tool. I see some raised hands. Again, if you could just submit written questions through the tool, we could respond to those directly and keep tabs of what we've answered and what we haven't. And I believe we have Roseann back on.
Yeah, 1 second.
Perfect.
Hello, and thank you, Brent, for that great information. I know wage and hour law is changing very quickly here in Washington State. And we do have a disclaimer. If you have any questions, please address Brent. Thank you. Oh, and the resource page. Let me put that up for a minute. Okay, great. Hello, is anyone there? Okay.
Yes, it's Allie.
Okay, I missed that. We had some bad luck last month, so I wanted to make sure someone was there before I went on. Sorry.
We did have a question come through, actually. I believe this one would be for Brent, so if you wanted to pass.
Here, let me give you back to Brent.
All right, so addressing Scott's question, the rules for paid time off, that will take about anywhere between 3 to 6 months to get finalized, and it has to be submitted to stakeholder review. It'll all be done pursuant to the Administrative Procedures Act, so it is very, very soon to say what those rules will look like. However, if you want to give me a call or an email, I can get you on our listserv that will go out to stakeholders regarding meetings about rulemaking in the upcoming year. And regarding Angela's question, the initiative doesn't make a distinction for part-time employees. It simply states that if 40 hours are worked, 1 hour of paid sick leave will accrue. And again, the Department of Labor and Industries didn't have a hand in drafting this. This was an initiative that was proposed to the people and voted on in last week's election.
Sweet. Thank you, Brent.
All right, not a problem.
Hi, hi. This is Roseann again, and just to let people know a little bit about what happens when initiative passes or the legislature makes a law, L&I that affects something at L&I develops a team that comes up with the proposed WAC language. And we stakeholder that very heavily, very, very heavily. So if you are interested in this law, please get on the please get on the stakeholder list, and Brent will, someone just put in their information, Brent's writing it down, and we will inform you when we make those changes. I know in workers' compensation, we also have a stakeholder list that we send out whenever we make law change, rule changes, sorry, not law changes, we don't change the law, we just change the rules. So anyways, but it is quite a process, and we do really want to hear from the people involved in it. And you might think that we don't listen, but we do. I have seen the rules change because we've had stakeholders that say, no, this is terrible, don't do this. We have to enact the law, but you do have power over how the rules are written. And so if you are interested in that, I don't know about Brent's part of his organization, but for workers' compensation, we have on our website, if you Google classification law changes, I believe, or rule changes, we have a website that kind of tells you what they're working on. And they also talks about what studies they're doing for risk classes. And they just had a hearings regarding rule changes for retail, which is, if you go to that website, it will talk about that. And I think there's another question for Brent.
For the anonymous viewer questions from ongoing pay, that would not be considered to the benefit of the employee, and my department would consider that an unlawful agreement entered into, and that would not be allowed. From final paycheck, that would most likely be okay as long as they don't dip below the minimum wage for that damage.
Okay, thank you for your questions. And I'm going to start with my presentation about workers' compensation. So workers' compensation, and what workers' compensation is it's a no-fault industrial insurance. So if someone gets hurt on the job, we're going to pay for their medical bills, and we're also going to pay for any time loss that they have. If it becomes a disability, we will create a pension for them. It's paid for with premiums. It's not part of the general fund of Washington State, which is something to know, because a lot of people think we're a tax that's arbitrary, but we're just like any other insurance, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit on my slides. Workers share in a cost of the coverage, which this is different for Washington State. If you have lived in any other states, you might find that the worker doesn't share in it, but we think it's important because we want them to have, as my old boss used to say, some skin in the game. So it's really important to let your workers know that they share in the cost. So if they see someone goofing off and being unsafe, that it's good to tell them, hey, knock it off, because that's going to up what I pay. It's mandatory for all covered workers. So if you have anyone who, pretty much any worker in Washington, unless it's a narrow, and there's a narrow exemption provided by law for independent contractors, people who own businesses, but they have to pass the independent contractor test to be considered an independent contractor. I'm not going to talk about it too much now, but if you have questions, I'd be glad to work through those. We cover 2.7 million workers and 174,000 employers, which is just a lot of people to be responsible for. But we do a pretty good job of it, I think. As I said, we're just like any other insurance company. It's what you pay is based on risk pooling, and that's costs of losses are spread over a larger group. So the example I like to use is homeowners. If on average, 1 in 1,000 homes will burn every year. We reach our most affordable premiums with a pool of at least 1,000 homeowners. If the pool only had 10 owners and we needed to cover the losses of the home for $200,000, each homeowner would have premiums to pay $20,000. It wouldn't be very affordable. Likewise, if we had 100 homeowners, we'd need to pay $2,000. It's better, but it's still a big burden on that homeowner. So for the most reasonable amount, we would need a risk pool of at least 1,000 homeowners that would pay premiums of only about $200 a year. Again, I live in Olympia, not Seattle, so a $200,000 house is an Olympia house, but it's still a burden, but it's a much more manageable burden. So a lot of people say, well, if you had a larger risk pool, wouldn't my premiums be even less? So you should have a larger risk pool. Well, not really, because we know that 1 in 1,000 homes are going to burn down. So if we had a larger risk pool, that would be more houses burning down. So it would still need to cover those costs. But it's just like any other insurance principle, any other insurance, we operate the same as them. So what we base our risk pools on is nature of business. So we look for similar exposure to risk. Take bicycle stores, and I did not change that picture, is about 55 cents an hour. Shoe stores are about 33 cents an hour. Music stores are about 37 cents an hour. And department stores, where there's a lot more people, a lot more moving of stock, is going to be about 78 cents an hour. So we kind of group people into their different risk pools. And like I said earlier, we're doing some changes to the risk pool, make it a little more easier. If you're interested in that, we do have some information on the website about the classification study that we have done. Some people ask about division of hours, and division of hours is allowed, but there's some classifications that do not allow for division of hours. Clerical, outside sales, LLC members that only come in and do meetings, they don't really work in the nature of the business. And if you have a separate person that maybe comes in and cleans the store after hours, janitorial, there's no division of hours. So you can't have someone come in at night to clean your business, but then they work on the floor during the day. Then you would just put them in their regular classification. Clerical has to be separate from the hazard of the business. So they work in an office, they answer phones, they maybe go to the bank, but they don't work anywhere else. They can't be part-time salespeople, part-time clerical. Again, risk classes, we look at what's included. We have the WACs that we go through. You can look up on our website to see if you're classified correctly. Do I have the right class? And you want to look at that often, because we know the nature of business changes all the time, especially in retail. You can be, this kind of store one day and another kind another time, because it's constantly changing. I worked for quite a few big department stores. I was a retail manager, and I know that it is always changing, and the nature of business has changed a lot from when I started in retail a few years ago. And look and see, could you get a clerical class? Because that's a really low, inexpensive class. And you want to know where you report each of your hours. If you want, you can ask your account manager or check online at our website. We have a risk class lookup tool. If you put that in the search box, it'll pop up and give you every classification. So why is it important? How do we make these rates? We have 4 different funds that we want to fund. The first is the accident fund. No, that's your total rate. We have the employer share and the worker share. But it's made up of the 4 funds. The accident fund is what the employer pays 100% of. And that's the one, if we pay time loss, that accident fund is going to go up. So the employer is going to pay more if we have time loss. That's why it's so important to use those incentives that Joyce had talked about. We have the stay at work fund, which is actually where we pay the stay at work reimbursements from. There's the medical aid fund, and that is split 50-50 between the employer and the worker. And that pays for the doctor's visits, some Vogue, and things like that. Then there's a supplemental pension, which is the cost of living adjustments for extended wage replacement. So when the people that are on long-term, they can never work again, which we're trying to avoid, when they need a cost of living adjustment, that comes out of that. And almost every classification pays the same. A few wood products manufacturers pay more to pay for our logging initiative. So how do we come up with the rating of an employer? The base rate is adjusted upon the employer's accident record. We call it experience rating or your mod factor. We do this because it makes it fair, because if I'm really safe and Brent, let's say, is not very safe and he doesn't care if his people wear their PPE or run in the hallway or whatever, we shouldn't be paying the same amount because I'm doing everything I can to prevent accidents. It also encourages accident prevention, which is what we are about here at L&I. We want to keep Washington safe and we want to keep it working. So every new business starts out at a 1, and that means they're not yet experience ratings or they just calculate at a 1. But we do it. We do a we call it an experience rating calculation, and you can ask your account manager to email it to you. They can get it quite easily and forward it to you if you're the owner of the business. But we weigh what we expect your business reporting in your risk class with your hours. We say what would that normally be? What do we expect the losses to be in that? Because we do know you're going to have accidents. We want you to keep it medical only, but we know that businesses have accidents because people don't listen, and even the safest place in the world can have an accident. That's why they're called accidents. And then we look at your actual costs. So on one side, it says this is your expected losses, this is your actual losses. And then we do a rating calculation, and they're weighted, and we look to see if your actual costs are more than your expected losses, and then you would have a higher experience factor. So we would multiply the base rate by 1.2, 1.5, hopefully not 2.0, something like that. But if it's lower than expected, we can lower that. So I mean, I've seen people with that pay 0.6% of the base rate, some 0.2% of the base rate. That's uncommon in the very large businesses, but for small businesses, you know, you could get like a 10 or 15% discount. We do offer a claim-free discount. And a claim-free discount is where we do the calculation and then it goes down a little bit more because you don't have any claims that are not with time loss or PPD, or I like to say anytime we pay the worker, it costs the employer. So we're looking at clothing retails. You could see that we started base rate. An employer is going to pay like 23 cents an hour. A worker is going to pay about 10 cents an hour. If they have a claim-free discount, it goes down a little bit to 21 cents an hour or 9 cents an hour. But you could see for the year, for a full-time person, it does go down quite a bit. And then, but you can also see conversely, let's say you're not safe and you don't have a good accident prevention program, you could go up 1.25. And then you can see you're paying 5 cents more an hour. They're paying almost 2 cents more an hour. And for the year, it's quite a bit more, $90 an hour, $20 an hour, $20 a year. So it does make a difference, and you want to have the business advantage. Oh, sorry, I have highlights on there. So what do you need to know? Claims with an injury date of right on this side. So right now we are down here. So if you had a claim today, it would affect your rates in 2019, 2020, and 2021, which a lot of people think, oh, well, it didn't go up this year in that big claim I had, but it's going to hit you down the road. So you want to make sure that you're doing everything you can to get that injured worker back to work as soon as possible. One good thing to know, and so this year, what's affecting this year's rates is the claims you had from 7/1/2011 to 6/30/2014. This over here is the valuation date, and that's an important thing for you to know, because if you have a claim that's about to close but it hasn't closed and it's in May, you want to get on the phone to the claims manager and ask them to take a look at that claim and see if they can close it, because that's when we take a snapshot for the next year's rates. So if you have you have a case reserve on there, but it's actually going to close, you can actually save yourself some money by getting that to close, because then we'll use the actual cost instead of the case reserve. And that's really important for businesses to know, and people pay people to watch their claims and do that sort of thing for them. So that's worth the price of admission right there. There are limits to ratings. There's a 25% rule. So your experience factor can't go up more than 25% each year. So God forbid you had a really bad accident, maybe you know, someone's unable to work, it's still only going to hit you 25%. The bad thing is it can hit you for each of the 25, it can hit you for 25% in each of the rating years. So it could end up costing you quite a bit, but not as much as it could cost if we just put that calculation in there. There's also a medical only deduction, and this is really important to know because the $2,760 is twice the cost of the average medical only claim. And so whenever you get a medical only claim, we're going to deduct $2,700 right off the top. So that is, and that's what we use on your experience calculation. And that'll change in 2017. But so if you have a $1,000 medical claim, it's not going to be in your rating calculation. We also have a claim-free discount, and there is a video online. I'm not going to do it because it looks like we don't have that much time, but go check that out. There's some pages and information about the claim-free discount. The claim-free discount is when you have medical-only claims, you get it goes down a little bit from your rating calculation, so it saves you a little bit of extra money. You can have medical claims on there, but it's when you have the time loss, or like I said, anytime we pay the worker any money, that's going to cost you the claim-free discount. So it's really important to get the injured worker to the doctor as soon as possible if they are hurt at work, not tell them to take a few days off and then go to the doctor, because it could already be a time loss claim by the time they go to the doctor if that is what you're asking them to do. So how can you control your cost? Prevention, quick responses to near misses and injury. If they almost have an accident, you want to hear about it and you want to correct it, because next time it could be an injury. So that's the best way to do it. Make sure your workplace is safe. Having, as Joyce talked about, a return to work program, and use the stay at work reimbursements. And of course, safety is always first. I worked retail, like I said, for many years at department stores, and I know sprains and strains are terrible, but they can easily be prevented. Nobody should have a sprain and strain injury. 44 cents of every dollar that we pay out is a sprain or strain. And that's just lifting incorrectly, using incorrect tools to do the job. I know I used to use a ladder and I used to stretch over the ladder. I fell off the ladder, still can't kneel. So I know that having the right tool and using it properly is really important. And if you are a state fund employer, we do have free ergonomics consultations. They can help you you learn the correct procedures and set up your workstations correctly so you're doing things correctly. We also have a retail holiday safety page. I do want everyone to go to that and check it out and get some good information, some information for your safety meetings, because I know you're all having safety meetings, and your accident prevention program. We also have our safety health topics, A to Z, which has a wealth of information. Any topic you could imagine, using ladders, using anything. You want your accident prevention program, we can help you with that. We do offer free safety consultation. We do offer free consultations, which a lot of people don't know about. And I'm not supposed to say free, I'm supposed to say no fee, because if they do find something that needs to be fixed, you do need to fix it, and that might cost you money. But having a professional who knows his stuff come out, or her stuff, come out and help you is free. So we have safety and health consultations, and they can help you with safe workplaces. There's no fines or penalties assessed. It's completely separate from compliance. I said before, the ergonomics, sprains and strains, they can help with employees' movement and body mechanics, placement of work surface tools. And risk management consultation is really great too. They can help you with your HR practices, which I know are always hard in retail. Your hiring policies, which I know that you guys hire all the time. I'm an experienced hirer because of my time working retail. Rates and claims analysis for your account. So they can come to you with your ERCs and they can walk you through how to look at those. You can call your regional office at, that's the Tacoma number, but they can get you to the right one. And I'm looking to see if there's any questions.
It looks like we do have one that's up for Joyce.
Yes.
If she is still available to.
I can answer that one.
Sure.
But the question,
Oh, I was just going to read it out, but if you're going to, that's totally fine.
Okay. From Mindy, we have, is the stay at work program for state fund employers only? Is the paid sick leave for state fund employers only? So two questions. So the first one I'll take. The Stay at Work program is only for state fund employers. But if you are self-insured, the Preferred Worker program is for any employer. So Stay at Work, if you bring them right back after they're hurt on the job, where the reimbursements are only for state fund employers, but the Preferred Worker, if it becomes they're not able to return to their injury, their job of injury, they can take advantage of the Preferred Workers if they're keeping someone on, or if they're hiring someone that is unable to find work because of their workplace disability. So I'm going to, oh, it's just a no. The paid sick leave is a state law, so it's for everybody in Washington. January 1st, 2018. Are there any other questions?
We'll leave a little bit more time, I think, for people to submit those.
A lot to take in.
Yeah, a lot of really great information. You know, we had good participation today. A lot of great questions so far. So please don't feel like any question's a good question. So don't feel hesitant. If something's weighing on your mind, I did send out in the chat box Brent DeBeaumont email address. So if you wanted to get listed on that stakeholders list, Brent will be able to do so at his convenience. Oh, we have another question. Can you request an investigation into a claim that you think is bogus?
Yes, you can. You just would, if you're the employer, I'm taking it that you're the employer of the worker that you think is bogus. The important thing to know is that an employer is part of the claim. So if you think that it's bogus, definitely contact the claims manager and tell them why you think that that's true. Fill out your employer report of accident is really important, because that's your side of the story. We want to hear that from you. But definitely talk to the claims manager and let them know that you think that it's fraudulent. We do not want fraudulent anymore. If the claim is closed, there's nothing that you can do, because we send out orders and they have protestable language on them, so you have 60 days to respond, unfortunately. Sorry, Scott.
That's a really great question, though.
Yeah. The one thing I always tell employers when I go out and talk to them is you get a lot of mail with claims, and we're trying to work around that with our e-correspondence that is online. But what I can tell you is that open everything you get about a claim and see if it's protestable, and then really read it if it's protestable. But we also say if it says dear worker, it's to the worker. If it says dear provider, it's to the provider. So you don't have to read those as carefully. But if it says dear employer, that's to you, so you should be reading that. But if it says you have 60 days to respond, it's a hard 60 days, and you have to respond within that time period.
And do you know whether that's business days or if that is just days?
It's days.
Okay. So
there's a little leeway with mailing time.
Okay.
But we do have e-correspondence that you can sign up for in the Claim and Account Center, and you can manage your claims mail online. I want to give a plug to our Claim and Account Center, because it's a really great place for employers to see their account, see their business from L&I, we intersect with L&I, and follow their claims. They can do trend reports on there. So there's a lot of great information in our Claim and Account Center. Wait, what? If there, I believe, I would still talk to your claims manager, but I believe if it's closed, it's closed, and there's nothing we can do about it. But I would definitely have a talk with the claims manager.
Wouldn't you say to Roseann, a really good active way to practice to avoid those types of problems is just document, make sure
Yes.
you have everything?
Definitely. If the claim is open and there's fraud, then we can investigate. I would talk to your claims manager, and they can walk you through what you need to do. And they would be able to see the specifics of the claim.
While we received the last few questions, I'm just going to submit a poll out. So if all of our participants today could really quickly take this poll and just let us know what you thought of the information today, we would really appreciate it. It helps us be better and learn what you guys want to know and learn. So we really appreciate that. I'm going to send out my email through the chat. So if you have any information on what webinars you'd like to see in the future, I'd really like to see that information as well. And again, any further questions for our L&I folks, now's the time.
And Allie, I didn't realize I didn't put my contact information there. If you want to, if they have questions about workers' compensation, they can send them to me too. If you have my, you
Sure,
have
yeah. I'll put down Joyce and yours as well.
Okay, great. Thank you again for this opportunity. This has been really great.
Yeah, you guys always have great information. It's always fun for us to combine. And, you know, like I said earlier, a lot of people think that Better Business Bureau and L&I are the bad guys when in fact we provide a lot of services to help people before there is a problem. And that's what we want to be, that resource.
Correct. Yeah, we have a team of outreach people that want to get people to do it correctly up front so they don't get in trouble.
Exactly. So I just put in Joyce Allen's email. I'm going to follow it up with Roseann. Roseann, is the Corp 235 okay to put in?
Yes, that's fine.
Okay. All right, well, it looks like we've received all the questions we're going to receive, and we had really good poll feedback. So thanks again, everyone who participated in the poll. And let me hop back to my final closing notes. I have some contact information. So again, thank you for participating in the webinar. Thank you to Roseann, Joyce, and Brent, all from the Washington State Department of Labor and Industries. This webinar will be posted on BBB's YouTube page, as well as BBB's webinar homepage. Watch this webinar, or maybe even share this information with others that you think will find it valuable. I hope you have a great day, and please feel free to contact BBB with any further questions at 206-431-2227.